Hello, hello, hello. Good to see you. You get fairy dust, I get fairy dust, Amelie gets fairy dust, and it's time for another episode of Codependent No More, Melody Beatty. My Amazon affiliate link will be in the description for this book. I also recommend the workbook, but of course, any book, any self-help book is a workbook. All you got to do is get a pencil and a piece of paper, or just go into the book and start going to town and doing the work. She has questions at the end of each chapter that I really encourage you to answer. Okay. And when you ask, like, how do I heal codependency? It's like you have to work at it. You actually have to do the work. Reading is not enough. Insight's not enough. Freud says intelligence is used in the service of neurosis, of the neurosis. So if your intelligence is no defense against your codependency. So sorry for the bad news. But I have a question. I had a question. And if you have a specific question about what I'm talking about in these videos, you can ask it below in the comments. And I will do my best to get to it and answer it. But the question that I was asked is addressing detaching with love versus a clean break. How do you cope with this abandonment feeling? And it's really interesting. First of all, I love words so much, and I'd like to just talk about a clean break. That's not a thing. There's no such thing. And psychologically, there's no such thing as a clean break. Because it's like, okay, let's do a clean break. Don't think about polar bears. Let's do a clean break. Do not look at the fawn in the background of this video. Don't do it. Your psyche doesn't really give a fuck what you try to do. Your psyche, and so if I have a clean break from a person, they live in here. They might live in here. For me, detaching with love is the only option to make sure that they do not take space up in my head. And I do not keep in contact with people from my past who hurt me, make me feel small, make me feel like shit, make me feel, I don't feel choked by them or hooked by them anymore. I don't feel that at all. I have made peace because part of my bitchifesto is advanced bitches live a zero resentment life. And so I don't have resentments against those people from my past that hurt me because I've worked myself to free them. I've worked on myself to free from those resentments. So you could say I forgive those people or whatever. And even if it's not forgive, I just don't have there's no energy there. And so if there's no energy there, it's just like I don't need a clean break/closure, just like I don't need a clean break/closure on my breakfast. My breakfast was a non-issue. Like I don't need to think about stop thinking about breakfast, because, I don't need closure from how I did my makeup this morning. Like, it's just a thing that I did and it's done. And I don't need closure from the 30-minute walk I took. I don't need closure from that because that's healthy, normal behavior. So I don't need closure. When I get home from my walk, I don't need to go, okay, you're done with your walk. Like, I'm just done with it because I'm not hooked by it at all. And so, doing codependency work is about not being hooked. And my thing is, if you are being abused, by all means, immediately disconnect and don't be with that person. But if you're not being abused, I wonder what tools can you use to not continue to be hooked by a person, not continue to be thwarted, have your day thwarted by a person who's being a dum-dum. Okay, so that's that, and that's what this whole book is for, is how to detach with love. That's what this whole chapter is for, which we're talking about. We're on page 59, the detaching with love chapter. And okay, so let's go to the last part of the sentence, or the last part of the question was, how do I deal with that abandonment feeling? Okay, I don't know if you saw the TikTok/reel that I did the other day, but I had a bowl and I was pouring in, still have the bottles here, pouring in things. This is a childhood trauma. This is pouring in. So now I'm going to do it with codependency. Make them think that they're abandoning me if they try to set a boundary. That's part of upbringing that is dysfunctional. Is that to think that if you heal and gain autonomy, you are abandoning the people. I would argue that you are actually being a healthier part of the family, and so it's actually the opposite of abandonment. Just because you're not going to, chase other adults doesn't mean that you didn't abandon them. You just stopped chasing adults because you realized that wasn't effective or helpful to your life. And so if it, I don't know any certain information. If your gut tells you to cut someone off, you have to cut them off. I mean, that you have to follow your inner guidance. For me, I'm trying to figure out how to live so people don't live here in my brain. Codependency lives in my brain. I don't want toxic people to take up space in my brain. And I have found in my experience when I do a cutoff, they live there. And so for me, I want to manage them so I can manage them externally, so I don't have to manage them and manage myself internally with my own codependence. I would say if you are trying to detach with love from a toxic person, that the fact that you think that it's abandoning them is part of your resistance. I'd like to introduce you to your inner saboteur. It's like, oh, you can't abandon that person, and it's like, I'm just trying to set a boundary. And that's what most people think. Like, they're just trying to set a boundary, not do something with that person at Thanksgiving, or, not being around people because you don't want COVID. Like, trying to set those boundaries, but then it feels like you're abandoning them. No, you're setting healthy boundaries. You're modeling health. You're modeling boundaries. But to fawns and codependents, it feels like abandonment. Just like self-care feels selfish. It's not. But we were entrained, brainwashed to believe that it was, because anytime we did that, we got our hand slapped. Self-care, you got a hand slap. Setting boundaries, that's a hand slap. And so we learned, like, oh, I can't set boundaries because I don't want to upset that person. And now you want to set boundaries and it feels like abandonment. That's that same shit from childhood. So trust your gut, talk to your therapist, not necessarily friends. If we attract each other at our level of mental health, and I'm feeling like I'm abandoning somebody because they're treating me like shit and I don't want to be treated like shit anymore, then a lot of my friends might be taking shit from their people, and they're not that much of a comfort because they're having to take shit. So that's why I recommend somebody who is a little bit further on the path, perhaps a therapist, perhaps a coach, perhaps a sponsor in one of the 12-step meetings for relationships, codependency, somebody who's a little further on who gets what you're doing. It's really hard. It's a very, very, very difficult path, and that's why most people don't do it. I mean, it's easy. It's easier not to do it because you already know how not to do it. That's easier. But to push up against it, that's what I mean when I say advanced bitches. Like, that's what, I'm advanced. I'm fucking advanced. I'm going to do the hard thing because I want to heal more than anything else. That's my priority. My recovery is my priority. My recovery is number one. And I have to start getting comfortable with or start exploring or examining any of these feelings of abandonment. And the other thing is I need to test those for reality. How is, closing a door because I want some privacy while I journal or whatever, or closing a door because the rest of the house is too loud or something and somebody's mad because I closed the door. I have to decide if that is truly abandonment. You're trying to abandon the family. You're going away from the family and you're closing your fucking door. You have to see that that's actually not abandonment. That's a boundary. That's somebody trying to have some privacy. That is okay. Just because they call it an abandonment doesn't mean that's what it is. So I hope that's helpful. This is hard. This is beyond hard. And it's hard to explain. And it's hard to, when you believe something, when you believe setting a boundary or healing is abandonment, like that's not easy. That's not an easy thing. So I have so much empathy for you. But I think it involves reality testing, keep doing your work, trusting your gut, and then starting to get comfortable with being uncomfortable in the service of recovery. So I hope that's helpful. Love you. Bye.